Each year, approximately 50,000 Danish citizens die. Although many people find it unpleasant to consider how we will die, many have formed an idea about how the ideal way to die would be. To Annika Nielsen and her family, a fight against cancer has turned the end of life upside down.
Jeg har mistet min mormor for...
I lost my grandmother 17 years ago, and my older sister died 2.5 years ago after contracting breast cancer. 3 months later, my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and died 8 months after that.
Og der gik så 8 måneder. Der døde hun så. De sidste...
During the last 10 days of her life, she was unable to help herself and needed constant attention. She was in a great deal of pain and kept saying, "Help me, help me, I can't bear it."
Så ondt, og jeg kan ikke mere.
A wish to end one's life raises the questions about euthanasia, a very sensitive topic with individual emotions and tempers at stake. Ethical considerations are relevant in this context.
The subject of nursing and the rights for the terminally ill to decide for themselves is a very controversial one, especially during the last days of life, where ethical principles really come to a head. This really is an ethical dilemma.
Og det er her, hvor det virkelig trækker op til, kunne man kalde etisk tordenvejr.
It's important to be clear about the definition of euthanasia involving doctors.
Active and passive euthanasia are synonymous terms for deliberate inducement leading to the death of another human being. Euthanasia is illegal in Denmark. It's a criminal act in accordance with Penal Code 239, a law referring to killing on request. However, it is allowed for terminally ill patients to refuse treatment or to receive pain-relieving drugs, although it is well known that the medication might accelerate the time of the person's death. These cases are often referred to as passive euthanasia.
The way things are now, if you're lying helpless in a hospital bed in unbearable pain, a doctor has the right to cease any medical treatment you're receiving, even if it leads to your death. They do not, however, have the right to deliberately administer drugs that will lead to your death. Euthanasia presents us with an ethical dilemma. Doctors are becoming better and better at keeping us alive, and the request for the opposite kind of help is also becoming more frequent.
Lige til at spørge, om vi ikke også kunne få noget medicin, der frem for at holde os i live, så kunne gøre det modsatte. Så derfor bliver presset...
So therefore, society has to consider possible changes in our ethics and continue the discussion as things develop.
De her spørgsmål med jævne mellemrum. Sidst vi snakker om det...
The last time the subject was raised without putting it to a vote, it was clear that the majority were against the legalization of euthanasia in Denmark. However, not unanimous.
Enigt råd.
The Danish Council of Ethics was established in 1987 to discuss the ethical implications which occurred as the first test tube baby was born in Denmark. The purpose of the council is to give advice to Parliament and health authorities, as well as to start or be a part of the debates on bio and gene technologies involving human beings, nature, the environment and food. The 17 voluntary members are appointed by the Minister of Health after recommendation by Parliament and various ministries. They and the chairman are appointed for a 3-year period and can be reappointed once.
What impresses me about the Danish Council of Ethics is that all the 17 elected members have their own opinions, ideas and experiences, yet gather them around a table and together they're able to reach an independent and qualified conclusion.
The council, which has equal numbers of male and female members, consists of both experts and laymen.
The work of the council often results in a general statement that takes into account the varying opinions of its members. The members are often in disagreement and have very different perspectives on the subjects they discuss. There are experts and laymen with varying experiences.
Det er på en måde en pointe, at man ikke er enige.
The debate results in a broad-based conclusion for use in advising politicians and for public debate.
Både i forhold til at rådgive politikerne, men også i forhold til at starte en offentlig debat.
Ethics usually come into play where there's a dilemma involving strong opinions for and against a given subject. This is definitely the case here.
Dilemmaet er, at man på den ene side kan sige, at man har...
The dilemma is that on one hand you have a terminally ill patient who wishes to end his or her life.
Bestemt ved, at man selv ønsker at dø, versus hensynet til...
And on the other hand, you have the public opinion, which demands that doctors should not be allowed to end a patient's life. Rather, that more resources should be put into improving patient care as part of the medical practice. I think this is the most complex issue of discussion that I have ever come across. There's a strong argument for both sides.
Det etiske råd i Danmark har jo...
The Danish Council of Ethics has produced varying conclusions and reports regarding euthanasia, which in my opinion are valuable.
I de dog helt klart havde stærkere argumenter imod det, end de havde for det.
Though unarguably, the weight of opinion has generally been against legalization. I'm disappointed that they've stopped there, rather than considering contemporary reforms that could be helpful to the situation.
Opinion polls indicate time after time that a large majority of Danish citizens favours the legalisation of active euthanasia.
If death is inevitable and a patient wants a peaceful end to their life, then euthanasia should be a legally available option.
Man må gerne få aktiv dødshjælp. Jamen, det er også noget.
That's also a picture from Turkey. It's nice to see.
Det er dejligt at se.
Ja. Det er dejligt at se nogle minder, hvor hun er bare glad og det hele.
Ja. Hun sagde til mig, at jeg kan ikke.
She told me she couldn't cope anymore and that she wanted to die. She didn't tell me directly what I should do, but said she couldn't go on and that I should help her. The cry for help was clear. Her body had given up and she was helpless.
Det er da så indlysende. Hvad er det, jeg vil dø, jeg kan ikke mere. Hendes krop kunne jo heller ikke mere overhovedet, altså.
Der er du, og der er jeg.
Men der havde jeg mest lyst til at gå ud og...
I felt like taking the morphine from the fridge and putting a stop to her suffering. I considered it many times during the last 10 days.
Og jeg tænkte den mange gange. Rigtig mange gange i løbet af de 10 dage. Det gjorde jeg. Det er godt, vi har det her billede.
Ja.
It's good we have this picture. She's so happy.
Ja. Man må jo heller ikke slå nogen.
Of course we're not allowed to kill people, and I considered what the consequences would be if I did so. I also have my own family to consider.
Jeg skal tænke på.
By far, the most dominating form of euthanasia in the event that there is no hope is the termination of a patient's life-supporting medication.
She'd been granted her last wish, an entry in the hospital's medical journal stating that she didn't wish to receive medication necessary for artificial life support.
Og blive kunstigt holdt i live, faktisk. Fordi hun vidste godt, der var en ende på det. Og hun synes ikke, at hun skulle lide længere tid end højst nødvendigt.
Men der er mange gange, hvor patienten selv...
But there are many instances where the patient thinks it's going too slow. I think there's a large grey zone wherein people take their own lives, both in Danish hospitals and in their own homes, by ceasing to eat and drink. That seems degrading in a way. It's worth asking ourselves why people are driven to take their lives without an ounce of professional help. This is a strong point of argument for practitioner-assisted suicide.
I think that in cases where a patient becomes helpless, unable to eat or use the toilet and so on, it would be a good thing to have the option of practitioner-assisted suicide.
In my opinion, the laws surrounding this subject are out of date.
Physician-assisted suicide is one of the concrete alternatives to the present legislation, as put forward by social debater Mr. Niels Meyer.
It should be legal for designated physicians to prescribe drugs to patients who have had enough of pain and suffering and who wish assistance in ending their life.
Og nu vil de godt have en professionel hjælp til at gøre det færdigt.
When debating active euthanasia in Denmark, we often look to our neighbouring countries for guidance. In Switzerland, euthanasia is illegal, though it is legal to assist suicide.
Det schweiziske system består jo i, at der er en læge, der forbereder har en lang samtale med folk, der kommer.
The Swiss system allows a specialist, after a detailed and thorough consultation with a patient, to prepare a drink containing certain drugs. The patient then takes responsibility for the administration of the drug. Every year, approximately 1,500 Swiss people end their lives this way, along with a small number of foreigners who travel to Switzerland to do the same. According to the Danish press, it's half the population of England, but in fact the last official figure I heard was 85 people a year. For me it sounds very unpleasant having to travel to Switzerland rather than to my own doctor. The Swiss system points in the right direction, but I think we need to develop a Danish version of the system.
In the Netherlands, it's illegal to deliberately end a patient's life. However, if the patient's suffering is unbearable, the law allows that a doctor's assistance should not be sentenced if doctor and patient reach an agreement, which in turn is approved by two independent physicians.
There are between 2,000 and 3,000 cases of euthanasia a year in the Netherlands. That would convert to approximately 700 or 800 people a year if the system was legalized in Denmark. One could find oneself lying in a hospital bed, helpless in unbearable pain, unable to move, and wishing one could die quickly. In that situation, a doctor can lawfully stop a life-supporting medication, despite it leading to death. But he or she is not allowed to assist by administrating or prescribing drugs. I think this has to change. There's a large grey zone surrounding euthanasia in Denmark that I need to know more about before I can make any other decisions. I'd like to know how many people take their own lives by starvation or dehydration, overdose, or having the closest companion suffocate them with a pillow.
There are also a lot of older people who wish to end things and fail in their attempt to commit suicide. So what's the most humane? Giving people the right to choose the timing of their own death, or refusing their wishes, which can lead to painful failed suicide attempts.
We shouldn't believe that we have the perfect system. There's a lot of terrible things happening out there, in my opinion, that point towards the need for a structured, responsible form of legal euthanasia. I don't think it's fair for physicians who are in the limbo of the grey zone, unable to legally assist a suffering patient whose life is clearly over. As far as we know, it's quite common for physicians to take a risk and act anyway in the interest of the patient. I think it's unfair that they should have to bear such responsibility in taking that risk.
at de skal løbe den risiko.
It shouldn't be a punishable offence. I'd like to know how widespread euthanasia is in Denmark, despite its illegality. How wide the grey zone is between the legal and the illegal. What type of patients seek assisted suicide, the arguments used for its implementation, and how many doctors are involved. I think we need the facts before we can find the solution.
Mange vil nok i en moden alder tænke.
There are many elderly that reach the pivotal point, where they've had a long and happy life, but have decided that enough is enough. The way things are now, they have to find their own methods, perhaps a plastic bag over their head, or whatever they can think of. I think this is extremely unfair. A strange form of guardianship. I question the amount of uncertainty and amateurism surrounding the subject of suicide in Denmark. We could avoid this by introducing a legal form of medical assisted suicide.
Vi sigter mod det forkerte mål.
We're focusing on the wrong target here. We should focus on helping people whilst they're alive, not on introducing a form of euthanasia. Neither should we leave people alone to make those kinds of decisions.
Med en beslutning af den art.
For mit vedkommende, det er det væsentligste argument.
For my part, the strongest argument against the introduction of such a system is the chance of creating a slippery slope effect, where people who feel they're a burden to their family or society come for help in ending their lives. I wouldn't like that to happen.
Det vil jeg meget nødig have forekom.
I
can't see any risk of a slippery slope effect. To have the right to decide, after a good long life, to go to the doctor for a prescription to put an end to it. Where's the slippery slope in that?
Jeg anerkender argumentet om selvbestemmelse.
I appreciate the argument for the right to decide one's own fate, and it's a good argument. But I also believe it contains the grounds for opposing such a system.
Når patienter bliver indlagt på danske sygehuse, hvis der vil være en mulighed for aktiv dødshjælp, så vil man jo kunne blive indlagt netop.
Patients admitted to hospital will be aware that assisted suicide is an option. It's possible that patients may begin to think, hey, maybe that's for me. I'm more of a burden on society than a benefit. What kind of health service would that be? Where's the focus here?
At det måske også var en vej for mig, fordi jeg var måske mere til belastning end gavn.
Well, is there anything wrong with people thinking about the consequences they have on society? There shouldn't be any pressure on them. But I think it's fine if a bedridden elderly person comes to the conclusion that they're a burden on their grandchildren, who have to visit them every day. Why should they be an inconvenience for others? People have the right to consider this too. There's nothing wrong in showing consideration for one's situation and surroundings, yet the possibility that people may feel pressured is used as an opposing argument. We live longer thanks to modern medication and the health system. So why, when we can extend our lives, don't we have the right to end it when the appropriate time comes? This is a question that's being posed more frequently as technology advances. People in society are becoming more autonomous. The only thing that can dampen the growing demand for active euthanasia in Denmark is to rapidly expand the infrastructure for palliative treatment and hospice care.
Krav om, at vi skal indføre aktiv dødshjælp i Danmark, det er den der kraftige udbygning af palliativ behandling og hospicesystemet.
Steen Nielsen is a psychologist at the palliative department of Bispebjerg Hospital and has many years of experience talking with terminally ill patients about pain and suffering and the desire to end life.
I think a lot of people are frightened by the thought of what's going to happen, how an illness is going to affect them, frightened of death. What is death? Something that frightens most of us. I think the loss of control over the situation and the thought of what awaits is unnerving. I think the introduction of assisted suicide, giving people the chance to decide the timing of their own death, would give them a form of control over the situation.
Taler med, og dem jeg vælger at spørge, hvad ligger der egentlig bag
An overwhelming number of the patients I speak with think it would give them a feeling of control. Sometimes, if I get on very well with a patient, I ask, is it real control or just an illusion of control? This question always triggers a lengthy discussion. My own opinion is that it gives the illusion of control. There are many Danish people under the impression that the dying experience pain and suffering in the latter days of their lives, and because of that impression favour euthanasia. Pain and suffering were not the things that I witnessed on a recent visit to a hospice ward for cancer patients. When patients tell me that they wish to end their lives prematurely, I get the impression that it's a wish to escape from their discomfort rather than a real wish to die.
Mere behov for at komme væk fra lidelsen, end det egentlig et reelt dødsønske.
The Danish Council of Ethics agrees that palliative treatment has really improved during the last 10 or 20 years. Generally said, with modern medicine, a physician can relieve a patient of almost any type of pain. We've come a long way with pain relief. It depends, of course, on how specialised our doctors are. We still have a long way to go. Many other countries are way ahead of us when it comes to this kind of treatment. But I think we can improve.
Og jeg tænker, at andre lande langt længere fremme end os, og der man bedre til at lindre, og det vil vi også kunne blive her i landet.
We have the possibility to help right now. We have the pain-relieving drugs, the support for patients and their relatives. We have the tools we need. What we don't need is a health system that begins killing off patients.
Vi har ikke behov for et sundhedsvæsen, hvor vi oven i det skal begynde at dræbe patienterne.
I think it's great that we're getting better in the area of pain relief. We're all aware that we can't give total relief, that there are circumstances where pain relief doesn't have an effect, and that there are other problems beside pain. To put it plainly, it's fine that we can help each other in this way, and I'm sure that fewer patients will feel the need to take their own lives. But there will still be cases where assisted suicide would be the best solution.
Men der vil være mange, som stadigvæk har brug for selv at afgøre det.
Ja. Vi fik taget nogle gode billeder dernede i hvert fald af hende. Ja.
Tror du, hun er på vej over?
Do you think she's on her way over to us in this picture?
Der er jo dem, som ønsker at være
There are people who would prefer to die at home rather than in a hospice, and that was my mother's wish. Not to die in a hospital or a hospice, but to die at home. And she was at home when she died.
På hospice, hun ville være derhjemme. Og det var hun også.
If you ask most people on the street, where they'd prefer to die, there are very few who say they'd wish to die in a public institution. I think the figure is under 10%. But in reality, around 70% of us end our days in a public institution, and that's a striking statistic. Our wishes are definitely not granted in this case.
She was in pain occasionally, and we couldn't help her. Because she wanted to be at home, we didn't always have the necessary medication, and it wasn't possible to get hold of a nurse just like that. They were good at coming out to us, but it sometimes took 20 minutes and half an hour before they arrived. They also have other patients to attend to. There should be more help in this area.
I think that Denmark should give more focus and attention to palliative treatment. Yes, treatment on hospital wards, but also to the formation of medical teams that are able to visit people in their own homes and administer treatment there. There should be massive investment in the development of palliative teams and hospice infrastructure in Denmark. There's broad agreement on this.
Det var bare hårdt at se hende sådan. Det var det.
It was hard to see her that way.
Og da hun så endelig ender ud.
When she finally took her last breath on the morning of the 13th of April, it was so peaceful.
Der var det simpelthen så fredsfyldt. Det var sådan en meget... Det var en underlig fornemmelse, fordi jeg vågnede op.
It was strange, because I woke that morning when the nurses arrived with the feeling that something was different. There was something.
Der er et eller andet her. Det var sådan en eller anden fornemmelse, jeg havde, at nu var der et eller andet.
I went into her room and they told me her breathing had changed. She was breathing out twice, then in once. They advised me to stay with her.
Og jeg satte mig inde ved siden af hende.
I sat beside her bed. It was so quiet. And then her chin moved like this a couple of times, and she was gone. She was in peace, and it was so beautiful. It was a really good experience, but I think she had to wait too long.
Men jeg ville gerne have været det foruden, at hun skulle have lagt så lang tid.
Meget ofte, når jeg mødes med de efterladte efter.
Many times when I meet the relatives of a recently deceased person, I ask them about their experience. The vast majority of those I ask describe a peaceful and gentle ending.
Alt overvejende, at det blev en meget stille og en meget blid død. Og der er det interessant.
It's interesting to compare this with the patient's pre-death fears. They often fear a harsh, painful, violent death.
Barsk, smertefuld, voldsom død. Så i al den her diskussion om aktiv dødshjælp, så
I think we should consider these facts about death as part of the argument and ask ourselves what we envisage when we think of death. I think most people imagine it as being much worse than it actually is.
langt værre end virkeligheden.
If we're seriously considering the legalization of euthanasia in Denmark, there are three things we have to be clear about. Firstly, we need to know what people really think. It's not enough to make a survey standing outside the supermarket on a Saturday morning. We need to go into some detail about the kind of assistance they envisage. Secondly, we need the opinions of the healthcare sector in Denmark, not least the doctors. It's a long time since we've had a real survey carried out regarding their opinions on this matter. Culture and technology are constantly changing. What counted in the year 2000 doesn't necessarily count today. The third thing we need to look at is simply how people die in Denmark.
Those who close their eyes at night and don't wake the following day are lucky in a way. What a nice death to have. I wish it could have been that way for my mother. Just close her eyes and find peace. If I ever get into the situation my mother found herself in, I would like to have the option of euthanasia. After seeing my mother suffer so much pain, you have to see it to appreciate it. Yes, she's happy now. She's looking down on us to see if we're okay. I think she is.
Det tror jeg.